Let's move away from lies and fears.
Perhaps it's time to leave.
Free from how you look or what they say. Like a lion runs wild through the wilderness. Free from showing off a living fate. Like the eagles flying high, dancing with the air. There's breath in your lungs to breathe. Say, God, take this mask away. You see, he won't let you stay. Living in hollow days.
And on that note, welcome to this week's episode of ShatterCast. That's such a cool name.
It's
right?
cool.
Way cooler than Taserface.
Taserface.
Can this be like Taserface Cast? Can we? Is it too late to rename the podcast?
Maybe a
So,
couple weeks. Yes.
if you're watching and or listening to this podcast today, you should know this is the second part of our podcast sort of duo that we're doing for the Endgame movie. It is full of spoilers. If you're seeing this, Endgame has been out for like at least 2 weeks.
We're gonna have a big spoiler flashing here.
Lot of spoilers. Yeah, right
Why is
on
it in
him.
front of my face?
It's like in Monsters Inc. when Wazowski is on the cover, but the barcode's right over his face. You can't see him. Mike. Yeah.
All I have to say, go see Endgame and then come and
That spoiler is definitely still over your face right now. I know because I'm editing this later.
I don't like any of you.
So I am joined at the table by some familiar and some new faces. Y'all know me. I'm John. I'm your host. I've been here every time. You probably regret that. I don't. And I'm joined with
Brian.
Ooh, he's
Oh.
he's a little
Okay.
little cat-like
It's a little
today.
squirrely today.
That is Brian. And then we have
I'm just Derek. I'm not.
it's not
even gonna
Derek.
try. No, just Derek.
There's no R's in my name. I'm just John. And
I'm Savannah.
Savannah.
Savannah, thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about Endgame. Again, so many spoilers. If you haven't seen Endgame, first of all, what's wrong with you? Second of all, why would you click on anything that says Endgame spoilers in the title?
Hit pause.
That's silly.
Go see the movie. Come back and see us.
Exactly. Or
I
watch
guess.
this, realize how awesome that movie is, and also you won't enjoy most of the movie because you'll know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Go see the movie first,
Go see the movie.
and then come visit us.
And now that those people have left, if you haven't left, you're going to regret it because Iron Man dies. And I'm so glad that I can say that.
happened?
Dropped it.
I'm so glad I can say that. It's amazing. It feels so great to say.
Great to say.
What?
You're excited.
Great,
No,
you're
sorry.
The fact that I don't have to whisper it in the back corner of a restaurant.
Hey guys, what was your favorite part about the movie?
Dies.
Was it when Captain America retired and now he's really old?
Yeah.
What restaurants are you in? All right, let's keep going.
What are we? We're talking about Endgame, right? So,
We're
Brian,
talking Endgame.
Brian, Derek and I have already shared some of our favorite things in the previous podcast that we did last week. You guys should totally check it out if you haven't. Brian, favorite things about the movie?
I'll just start off with my favorite one of all. Whenever Captain America is fighting along, and Thor gets all caught up in the corner with Thanos, gets all tense, and then you just see Mjolnir flying over his head, and you're like, oh, Thor just called it. That's just Thor calling the hammer. And then
Did your theater go crazy? Because mine went crazy when that happened.
everyone was like, "Whoa!"
It was just that was the best part about the movies. Like even not the scenes, just the audience's reaction and being a part of that.
But Captain America has Thor's hammer now. If you didn't figure that out, but yeah,
It's pretty great.
Pretty fun. And he used it pretty well. Like the one
Right.
time he threw his shield and threw the hammer at it.
That
and
was
the
so
shockwave,
cool. There was also a cheer when that happened. I think
Yeah.
everyone was just like, Captain America's awesome.
Captain America might be my new favorite Marvel character now.
Yeah, we got converts.
Welcome to the team.
I
Welcome to the
also,
team.
mine was Iron Man and Thor were like tied for number one. I really identified with them for different reasons. But by the end of Endgame, I was like, nah, it's Cap.
True fan for a long time. Keep going.
I'm just a fair weather fan of Captain America, apparently. So we've already shared. So Savannah, what would you say is your favorite couple scenes?
Well, if we got to be serious, we got to talk about how Hulk is lit. Okay?
Fam. The last segment was full of yeet. This one's gonna be full of lit.
Tell us more, Savannah.
So in the movie, there is that one part where Ant-Man is all like meow 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 meow, and Iron Iron Man is like meow 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 meow, and then
I actually have no idea what she's talking about.
Keep going. It gets better.
Okay, I do.
It gets
and
better.
he has the case, right? And he's walking by,
I'm tracking.
and then all of a sudden, pow! Hulk comes in and be like, Hulk, no stairs.
No stairs. That was pretty great.
And then he goes flying, and then that reminds me of how in the last one, Infinity Wars,
Yep.
he was like with Loki. So it's just like
Original
the
Avengers.
first
Avengers, yeah.
First Avengers.
Puny God. I love that scene too.
yes, and then it just goes down, and then the
that's
whole
pretty good.
thing goes down, and then
You know,
I think there's a flying unicorn in there somewhere.
Yeah,
But,
Pegasus,
you know-
man. Pegasus shows up. That was awesome. Pegasus
great,
also like is taken out super quick. I hope it's okay.
I think it got back up.
She went down like within 10 seconds of carrying like, Spider-Man.
I think Pegasus got back up. Can I just say that was the best game of keep away I've ever seen in my life.
hot potato, guys.
like, oh my gosh, like, and then Captain Marvel shows up and she's like, "You got something for me?" And he's like, "Yeah, thank God." Basically, that was the look on his face. Was like, "Oh, I don't want to die. Take it, please." You know, Spider-Man didn't want to have to go a second time.
Oh, too soon.
Too soon.
Just right.
But he's
just
back.
Right. He's back.
Okay, so I knew that people loved Captain America. I knew they loved Iron Man. I knew they loved all of these people, right? I was expecting a huge cheer when Black Panther and Okoye and was it Shuri that flanked with them?
Shuri,
All
yep.
three of them?
Yeah.
Show up.
We got a cheer in my theater.
We did,
but
but it was a little low. It was more of like yeah. But then Spider-Man shows up, and the second he shows up and the mask comes back, that was almost the loudest cheer we got in the entire theater.
yeah.
It was intense. But going back
Tom
to
Holland
to
Spider-Man is like
Tom Holland,
He's crushing it.
That was
good job.
Marvel time and again is killing it in the casting section
Yeah.
so well. But going back to Captain Marvel, one of the things that I was scared of, because we had Kevin Feige said that she is. I've heard so many different pronunciations.
Keep going.
I don't know.
Kevin Feige, Kevin Feige, Kevin Fuji.
K Money, in an interview, he said that Captain Marvel is going to be the most powerful hero we've had in the MCU to date. So I was scared that the end of Endgame was just going to end up being a fist fight between her and Thanos, and she was going to save the day. I was scared they were going to Deus Ex Machina the crap out of this movie. But they use her so well. So,
Yes.
Derek, I know you want to talk about that too. It's just
Yeah, I was super excited. Exactly what you just said. I thought she was going to come in and this is just going to be a fight fest with Thanos, and then we're going to be, in game for the movie. I thought they used her so well. It made sense that she wasn't on Earth all the time. She was protecting other places. When she was fighting Thanos, she was super strong, super powerful, like holding the gauntlet apart.
she pulled
and,
like
like,
Captain America. I think she was about to
she
rip his.
punched him,
he
She was
didn't
about to
even
rip his
move.
fingers
Yeah.
off, though. Yeah, that was hilarious. He headbutts her, and she just like.
just smiling there. And to Thanos, it was really smart. There's been a couple theories. He pulled off the power gem, I think, and then smacked her. Like I was
Right.
like, and that took her out of the game long enough for us to get our ending with Tony. And just my goal, I just didn't want her to swoop in and save the day.
Right.
We've had these characters for 10 plus years now.
I want to see them do it.
I want to see them rally and find a way to beat Thanos. So
Well, and it's great because like he did headbutt her, and she just kind of like smirked about it. It was funny to her.
brush off the shoulder.
And I'm pretty sure if he hadn't done anything, she was about to rip his fingers off. Like,
Oh, yeah.
she was way stronger than
sure.
Captain America, and Captain America managed it for a little bit.
Right.
And what's great is when Captain America was doing it, he punched Captain America, he hit the ground, and that was it. He did the same thing to Captain Marvel, just this time wielding the Power Stone. So I thought it was fun that even that mirrored the end of Infinity War, where he had to punch Captain America, and in Endgame, he had to Power Stone punch Captain Marvel. So it's just little things like that I really enjoyed.
Can I just say, we've mentioned this a little bit, but just when Captain America's standing there by himself, there's all Thanos and all his troops, and he's going for it. He's like, this is where it's going to end.
He's got a broken shield, and
He's
he
ready
just
to do it.
tightens it.
And then when
I
Falcon
thought
says,
he was gonna say, what does he normally say? I forgot.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna say
I
that.
felt like he was about to say it.
I was like, I could do this all day. That's what I was.
I'm actually kind of glad he didn't because
Yeah,
we had that good
overused.
joke back in New York where
Yeah.
he's
True.
yeah, I know.
When
Yeah,
when
that's true.
Falcon says on your left, and then we mentioned this, but when the first portal starts, my theater erupted, and that was so awesome. That
Yes.
whole battle scene was so well done because I felt like almost every character had a moment to shine, and I
Yeah.
feel like this is when Marvel did a very great job of just highlighting just their characters that they built for 10 years and giving them just a little limelight to kind of just shine, and also just the heart moments. Even before we get to the Iron Man scene where he sacrificed himself, but just even
Spoilers.
sorry, I know, right? Just even when Spider-Man comes back and Tony comes to him and he just hugs him, and
he's like,
we
"Oh,
think,
this is nice."
This is nice. This is nice." And we think back to the Spider-Man movie when he's reaching, Tony's reaching across to open the door for Peter, and Peter thought he's going
like,
for a hug.
Oh, this isn't a hug. Just opening the door.
And for this one, for Tony to run and give him a hug, like it's just those small character moments that I think really make this movie great.
And I love their relationship too.
Yeah.
Like, he's not really his son, but it's like Iron Man is Spider-Man's father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so cool how they just put that out so much, and it's so well too.
Yeah.
That even when they were out in space, they were like, "I got you, don't worry," and then "Phew," and then "Phew."
Well, that, in this incarnation of Spider-Man, I love that we didn't get an origin story. They figured it out. Marvel knew we don't need it. We all know Spider-Man.
Everyone knows Spider-Man. We're good.
We got it. We know with great power comes great responsibility. And
Just say it next time. Just say the line.
And
but keep going.
he made that line like 45 seconds long when he was talking to Tony in Homecoming. He really didn't need to. But specifically, in Iron Man 3, you have the kid Harley, and that was like the first moment you kind of see Tony as a dad, that sort of father figureness. And then in Homecoming, well, in Civil War, but especially in Homecoming, you see it even more with Peter Parker. I totally agree with that. And then in Endgame, spoilers, he has a daughter. Morgan. And here's what's in the very beginning of Infinity War, he when he's walking in the park with Pepper, he tells her about the dream that he had, how she was pregnant and they had a kid, and we named it. What's your eccentric uncle's name? Morgan. We named it Morgan. And then his daughter's name is Morgan in Endgame. So even that is so cool.
That's so cool.
And so we see him as a father.
Right.
Ultron, Civil War, what do we see? A man driven by fear and a desperation to save those that he loves. Iron Man and Thanos are two sides of the same coin. Like, they both are driven to save what they love to totally different extremes. It just so happens that one is callous and cold and one is driven by love, thankfully.
Right.
And that one's on our side. And so Thanos and Iron Man, and Thanos is a dad, right? Even though he didn't father Gamora, he raised her. And just that moment in Infinity War for me had a lot of emotional impact because when he threw her over the ledge, he got the Soul Stone, which means without a doubt he had to have loved her. That's the rule. You have to sacrifice that which you loved. And so Thanos loved Gamora like a daughter. And so we see that same thing where, guess what? Tony Stark's got a daughter, but he's not going to sacrifice her to save everyone. He's going to sacrifice himself.
And Gamora says that in that scene. She says, "This isn't love," and it's before she really clicks what's about to happen. But it's a twisted kind of love. It's abusive love that Thanos has for his daughters, including Nebula, and we see that abuse, right there. But for Tony's love of his daughter, I love the fact, and we'll get a little bit more into this. His hesitation in helping the team was all built on, hey, this world's going crazy. It's been a crazy 5 years, but I have a family. I have a daughter, and I don't want to do anything to mess this up.
Yeah, his whole thing was bring everyone back to now. Don't change anything that's happened. He couldn't afford to lose what he had found. And when they went back to 1970 and he got to see his dad, I really loved that scene. I loved it because it helped bring closure to Tony's character because he was about to die. Now, he didn't know it at the time, and we thought it, but we didn't know it at the time. But I'm so glad that he had that moment before he died. And it was interesting because one of the things that they said when Howard and him were talking on the ground level, Howard said, man, I really hope it's a daughter. Why is that? Because then less likely that it'll turn out just like me. And Tony says, would that really be so bad? Because Tony's thinking, man, I really turned into you. And Howard says, I've always had trouble putting the greater good before my own self-interest. And at the very end of the movie, Thanos has the glove and he's got the stones, and Tony looks over to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange holds up that finger, reminding him there's one way.
This is the one way.
And that's the moment where Tony realizes his instincts are right, and he knows what he has to do, and he has to put the greater good in front of his self-interest. And like, I got to stop talking. I'm literally going to start crying. It was such a beautiful moment of storytelling. Almost 11 years with these characters, and every moment was so believable. Like, I love Civil War because I bought their performances because they had earned that. And so there's such a finality to what Tony had done. He really finished.
Yeah. And I think that brings us to our faith point today. We want to talk about finishing the journey, not just finishing this movie, which is amazing. There are a bunch of different characters who finish their story arcs, some who will continue. We'll see what happens to Thor and all that.
Loki.
Loki.
Loki
Doing
lives.
this-
Hashtag Loki lives 2019.
There's
No.
two characters specifically we want to talk about. We're going to just ignore that. One is Captain America and one is Iron Man. So let's start with Iron Man. To Savannah's point, one of the reasons that Iron Man decides to help the team is two reasons. One, because when he's cleaning in the kitchen, he sees Peter's picture.
Yeah.
And this world is not perfect because his son is not there. And so that was a motivating factor for him to hop in. And then I love the conversation him and Pepper have on the couch, and where Tony's like, hey, yeah, I saw this. I could help out. But he says, you know, I don't want to do this. I want to throw this in.
Yeah, he's like, I could toss it in a lockbox and drop it in a lake.
Yeah. And Pepper says something to the effect of, if you do that, you could sleep, but would you really be able to rest? And our fifth point, we just want to talk about resting. And what we mean that in that way, when Tony finally sacrificed himself for the greater good, he does this nap, and everyone's mourning, and Pepper shows up. And the most amazing scene, she says, we're going to be okay. You can rest now. The whole 10 years, this whole story arc of Iron Man, who in the very first movie felt so guilty about his weapons being used, or his technology being used for weapons, him going to PTSD and the Avengers. He's always had this theme of having a hard time of sleeping, having a hard time of resting. And when his mission is accomplished, his wife says, it's okay. You can go. We're fine. You can rest now. And
can I just say real quick,
go for it.
When he was wielding the gauntlet, you know what he didn't do? Scream and cry like Hulk.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
I just want to throw that out there.
Shots
Even Thanos,
fired.
when he put the glove on, was like, oh! And what does Tony do? He's like, yo, dog, I am Iron Man. Boom! I'm just saying, Tony.
There you go.
He's pretty great.
So that's Tony's story arc. Captain America has another culmination of his story arc, more of a heartfelt in a way. He's able to finally, he's the soldier. He's the one who always sacrifices. He always does the right thing. And he's the one who's sent back to return the time stones. And he makes a decision to actually have that dance with Peggy, who he's loved all his life, and to live out his life with her. And just to see that scene was satisfying, to know that this man who sacrificed everything finally has some happiness for himself. And
well, at the beginning, Tony Stark had said to him, maybe you should get a life. You know, when they tried to convince him to help him with the time machine and fix everything, he's like, I have a life. You should try that. And Cap took his advice.
Yeah. And so for both those characters, we have a nice into the story arc, and we just want to talk about what it looks like for us to rest. There's some really cool passages in the Bible where it says in Matthew 25 that we all long for God to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. It's this idea when God the Father said to Jesus, the Son, this is my Son whom I'm well pleased. And even Paul said, when towards the end of his life, I have fought the fight, I have won the race. And I think where we're a believer or not, we have this this creator who made us, who loves us, and who put a piece of himself in us. And so I think we're all yearning to have that creator say, you've done well. Your life has had purpose. You fought the good fight. Well done. And just to see both Captain America and Tony Stark kind of in a way get that, hey, you've done well, you can rest now, was amazing. What do you guys think about that? That idea that as people, we're never satisfied until we're actually doing what we're supposed to do. And we're never fully at rest until we do the right thing. And that just that idea of that we might be able to sleep at night, but there are some choices that we make that we can't really rest with until we actually go and make it right. What do you guys think?
This movie really finished all the stories that they were compiling together. Like when Captain America actually went back and was able to do his story, he was able to finish what he had started. And with Iron Man, I had a feeling that either Captain America or Iron Man were gonna die or at some point.
Yeah.
But I kind of wish that they didn't have both of them. But I liked how they went about it. It was really sacrificing with Iron Man, sacrificing what he was doing, and with Captain America, he got to finish his story. But with us, it's kind of hard because we don't really know our story. We don't really have that all timed out. So
That's a good point. Like we can watch the MCU, all near 51 hours of it, and see where it's leading. We see the foreshadowing, you know, and I mentioned the Howard Stark thing about the greater good. That was very much foreshadowing. Even going into the movie, like you said, had a feeling at least one of those two was going to die, if not both, and the other one was probably going to retire. And that's exactly what ended up happening. But when we look at our own life, it's easy to miss those moments where God is even hinting at things until we have the benefit of hindsight, right? You know, it's like going through a really dark time in my life, lasted almost 2 years. And at the end of it, so much made sense from those 2 years that in the moment were awful and terrible. And I was wrestling with it and wrestling with God and didn't understand it because when I was in the middle of it, I couldn't see through it. But being able to look back, a lot of things started making sense. And so sometimes we don't know how a story is going to end because we're so caught up in the middle of it. You know, to watch the MCU is one thing, but for a moment, imagine that you are Iron Man. He's not expecting to die at the end of that fight. You know, when you see the hologram that he left for his daughter, I love you 3000 peace, right? Oh my gosh. He recorded that right before the time heist, and he was like, what am I saying? We're all going to be fine. It's going to work out great.
right.
He died. And there are so many times where we think, you know, it's all fine. It's going to work out great. But we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the end looks like. And it doesn't need to be as dark as death, but we don't know how tasks are going to finish. But we need to be able to recognize when they're done. You know, Pepper calling that out. We're going to be okay. That was the defining moment for his task being done. Knowing that his family and friends were safe and they were going to be okay. That was what defined the end for him, and he was able to rest. So we need to know, even if we can't figure out what the end is, what is the defining factor for that so that we can rest. Even God took a whole day off after he made everything, right? So if resting is good for God, it's good for me.
I took it a little bit like differently, I think I would say.
Go for it.
I kind of figured out that circling around the crucifixion, for Iron Man, I can just imagine that he has seen his daughter's entire life. Like, he already knows that she's going to go to school and that she's going to be good and she's going to have her mother and everything is going to be fine. And I feel like with that is what brought him peace. And I think that is why he did what he did and took all the stones. Now connecting that to Jesus, I mean, he knew what he was getting into, but he also knew what he was going to be doing it for our sins. And he knew that even though he was going to be crucified in the most horrible way, he knew that everybody was going to be okay because he's Jesus. And that he knows that there are going to be some faults, as in with Iron Man, I mean, he had people coming at him and he fighting and Thanos and Thanos was like, oh my gosh, where's my stones? Like, there are going to be complications, but at the same time, there was a way for Iron Man to get away and to be able to actually have the power, knowing that, yes, I'm going to die, but be at peace with himself before he rests, knowing that his daughter's going to be okay, knowing that his wife is going to be okay, knowing that his friends are going to be okay, just makes that connection even more great. And going into Captain America, I saw very early in the movie that he had a connection with, I am forgetting her name.
Peggy or
Black
No,
Widow?
Black Widow. Is it? I was gonna say
Scarlett
it, but
Johansson's character?
Yes.
Yeah, Black Widow.
I didn't want to say it. Be wrong.
No, you're good.
But I saw the connection that they had, and I felt like they were more connected with each other than they were with the group. So having their connection and having him lose her, I feel like he didn't have anything else to live for. But knowing that she's gone, I feel like he had that time to be like, okay, she's gone. What am I going to do with myself? But now I can go and return these stones and have a life that I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
And that was his piece. And when he came back, that was like his I am finished kind of ending. So
Cool. Yeah.
To your point before, John, I think one of the reasons God rested says that so he can enjoy what he created. And I think for great point you just made about Captain America, I think the mission was accomplished. They saved the world. He can now enjoy his life.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think that's just something for us to remember. God wants us to fight hard, to do the right thing, but also to enjoy what he's made for us every single day and enjoy just fellowship with him. So I think that's a good reminder for us as well.
Well, in Infinity War, it's like, what are you going to do when you're done? Like talking to Thanos, and he's like, I'm going to sit down and watch the sun rise on a grateful universe. Well, he not very grateful, but Captain America went back in time to live with Peggy, to have the life that he wanted in total comfort and joy, knowing that it was safe because he's already been in the future. He's already taken care of it. He knows how the story ends. He doesn't have to worry about it. And he can actually watch the sunrise on a grateful universe every day because the mission was accomplished, because it was finished. And he gets that chance to rest as well. I think if the roles were reversed, I think if Captain America had died, I think the movie would have been good, but I think it would have been a lot less satisfying because it would have felt like he lost a lot of things that he loved and eventually his life. And he laid his life down like a soldier would, but it would have just felt what if. Whereas with Tony, it made sense.
yeah.
It made a lot of sense. And I was so happy that Captain America got to go back with Peggy. I was also really happy that he wielded Mjolnir.
Yeah, right.
I just, I can't get away from that scene. It was the best.
If you remember, wasn't he actually like sitting on the bench with the sun setting with the lake?
He was. Oh, okay. So here's the thing. I just want to say about, like, I know we've been in our faith point for a bit, but I just want to say, I'm pretty sure Bucky knew. Like, I feel like he had a conversation with Bucky. Like, hey, just so you know, I ain't coming back. Because what did Bucky say to Captain America right before he went in the time machine? He said, I'll miss you. Bucky knew it was just going to be like 4 seconds from his perspective.
Right.
So if he didn't know, why would he say, I'll miss you? Because as far as, like, it'd be like Derek saying, like, I'm going to go grab a soda out of the fridge, and me going, I'll miss you.
Right.
I'm like, what's in the fridge? What's in the box? Like, it wouldn't make sense for me to say that. So it doesn't make sense for Bucky to say that. And on top of that, he knows exactly where to look. Cap is there on the bench. And when him and Falcon walk over, he tells Falcon, go ahead.
Right.
I feel like he knew the whole time because I think he was Cap's best friend.
Right.
Cap had to have had a conversation with him. I can't imagine he would do that and not tell his best friend.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, yeah, you're taking all the stupid with you. That was great. That was great.
He had to like have felt like some type of like, oh my gosh, he's giving me his shield. Like that's
The shield.
that's the shield. Like
Yeah.
I am holding it in my hands, arm, for certainty that he
A
is
little bit bigger than that. But yeah.
like
The little tiny capped shield.
like just imagine what's going through his head right now is that he actually has Captain America's shield in his hand. What does that even mean to him? Like I just want to know exactly at that moment what he's thinking exactly, like
That it belongs to someone else.
well but then like for him personally, like knowing where it's been,
Mhm.
knowing that it's been in so many wars, which then confuses me because didn't it get cut in half?
Let's
It's just the time
Don't.
thing. You just
Yeah.
gotta let it go.
But
We're
then,
gonna assume that he took it back and got it fixed. We're gonna.
Yeah.
Yep.
But-
yep.
He
At
brought
the
back
same-
the shield
Well, hold
from
on.
the past.
Yeah, that was totally what happened because he didn't take a shield with him. He just took Mjolnir.
That's true.
And he came back with the shield. So he totally just like stole that shield.
As to what's gonna happen, we're gonna find out
There's
in the
gonna-
Winter Soldier and Falcon series.
There's
coming
gonna
up.
be a show. There's gonna be a show.
gonna be a show.
Endgame was awesome. Like we're coming to the end of this segment, and it already feels like we could record 7 more because the
Already
movie
way
was.
overtime, but it's okay.
We are over time, but
But
I
it's
am.
okay.
It is okay. It is okay. I hope it's okay for you that this movie was so good. It was so good. It was what I needed it to be. Not to be selfish, but it is a capstone to an 11-year journey. I've been watching MCU movies longer than I've known my wife.
Wow.
Yes.
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
Don't say that on your anniversary. Hey, go back.
I've only known her 8 years, and I saw this 11 years ago.
So with this, the whole story with all the MCU movies lining up and all of with Jesus' story, with his last words, he would say, "It is finished."
But the MCU's not.
Well, you don't
On that
ruin the
note, I'm
point.
sorry, Brian. I'm sorry.
You ruined his point.
Well, you bring up a good point. I'm gonna watch all the movies that are coming out because I'm excited for them. But if I didn't,
This
if this was the
storyline.
last one,
The storyline is
I would be
finished.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, in an interview, they were asked before the movie came out, is there anything you can say about Endgame? And they're all under like the tightest NDR you can imagine. And so they're all like,
No.
no. And then Chris Evans goes, I got something. And Robert Downey Jr. is like, do you?
Do you?
Do you?
That reminds me of
and it basically was like, is there anything you can say about the end of the movie? And Chris Evans just says, satisfying. And I concur.
Yeah.
That movie was satisfying.
Yeah.
I walked out of the theater.
Like there's
satisfied.
nothing you have to change about the movie to make it any better. It was just satisfying.
Some people would have preferred Slim Thor, but I like Chunky Thor.
Yeah. and I think one more point, and John, you said something earlier that made me think about this. The characters to go back, take a meta look at this. The actors have to trust the writers that they're going to do well by their characters, and that they're going to end their character arcs well. And with the exception of very few, maybe 1 or 2 in the middle, I think they did well. And so I think we're talking about our stories. We don't know how our stories will end. I think you mentioned that, Brian.
We can trust the writer.
We can trust the writer. Yeah.
Yeah, talking about God. Jesus. Yep.
There you go.
That's
our point. There
good.
you go.
That's good. On that note,
On
I
that
think
note.
we'll end it there.
as Jesus said,
It is finished.
it is finished. Go in peace, sin no more. I love you.
Avengers.
I love you. 3,000. No, that one's not looking at. Oh,
Oh gosh. Okay, here we go. Yeah.
I love you. 3,000.
Recording. Sorry. Okay. Oh, come on.
For the whole thing.
I love you. 3,000.
Oh, jeez.
Goodbye.
From how you look